Renault Arkana, or as it's known here, the Conquest. That's why you'll see the Conquest badge on the back. This is an Etech model, which means it's a full hybrid. It's got a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder gas engine under there, as well as a small 1.2 kilowatt hour battery and an electric motor, which means that they both work together to drive the car. Conquest has a few interesting exterior details in the form of some contrasting colors, which are also present on the wheels. So this is where all the magic happens, under here, because, well, over here you've got the gas engine, and this is probably some sort of a controller, battery somewhere under there, and then an electric motor as well. And that's your hybrid. After driving this car for a little while, I was a bit skeptic about its fuel consumption because it doesn't really have a very big battery, certainly nothing compared to electric cars. But still, it's a bigger battery than the mild hybrid models out there. But the fact that I will have half a battery charge left and suddenly the engine will turn on, even though I'm not accelerating hard, and it will start using about 15 to 17 liters per 100 kilometers instant fuel consumption, because it's also charging the battery, made me think that this was going to be an exercise of futility, where I'm trying to drive as economically as possible, but I'm still getting bad numbers. But this isn't really true. Of course, I should have known that engineers do know better that design these cars than I do, because all in all, right now I am at 5.3 liters per 100 kilometers. So you might say, wait a second, that's not that great for a hybrid car. And I would agree, but the fact is, my lowest was 5.1 and it was still slowly dropping. There you go, I'm barely accelerating and it's still, it just turned on the engine. But this was a fair bit of driving through heavy traffic in a big city as well, and then on the highway at around 140 kilometers per hour. So definitely, like usual, if you go on the highway, these cars are not necessarily the best for fuel consumption, but it's still not bad. If you're driving just on rural roads like these, and you're driving economically, then you can expect, I would say, to have 5 liters or maybe even a smidge below 5 liters per 100 kilometers. So it has definitely surprised me there. I was expecting just not very good fuel consumption. Well, now that I say that, it's gone up to 5.4 and now, right now, back to 5.3. Anyway, what about everything else? It's very nice because it has an electric motor, which means, of course, that you have recuperation. So you have a drive or a B mode, and in B mode, which is usually my favorite, that's almost like one pedal driving. It won't come to a complete stop, but you will have the full regeneration available, which means that you will, in most cases, if you know what you're doing in advance, you will barely ever touch the brakes, which is excellent because you're saving the brakes, you're saving your foot having to go left, right, and you're also charging the batteries. So you're recuperating some of that energy that's otherwise just lost in heat. So it is quite pleasant to drive this because you've got the reasonable acceleration of an electric motor. Obviously, it's not an electric car, so don't expect that oomph of power, but it is reasonably quick. And you've got regeneration, which is brilliant, and otherwise it's just nice. The only problem I have is that sometimes it will turn on the internal combustion engine, and instead of just having it run at the highest gear possible, it will actually use a lower gear at higher RPMs to charge the battery as well. Which means that not often, but sometimes, especially on the highway, it will drone a little bit. at higher RPMs, and there's not much you can do about it. That's just how the system works. But otherwise, the interior, well, it's nothing special, but I kind of like the design of it, especially the steering wheel. This steering wheel is absolutely fantastic. It's quite thick. It's wrapped in partially perforated leather here. It's slightly soft as well. It just feels very, very, very ergonomic and lovely. I also have to mention the seats. The seats are very nice. They're very comfortable. And in fact, because I drove that Mazda CX-60 a little while ago, which is a more premium car, and it didn't ride as nicely as this one. This one rides, I think, has a little more of a supple ride, and the seats are definitely more comfortable. So the Renault gets a big plus here. So while I wasn't really, a fan of this idea at first, I have to say they pulled it off, I think. It's not a magical fuel consumption number, but it's good. And like I said, it drives nicely. The only concern I would have if I was to buy this car is the fact that this starting and stopping of the engine. Now that in itself is not really a problem. The problem is when the engine is completely dead stone cold and suddenly, it'll start it up at slightly higher RPM to charge the battery. Now, in the car's defense, it does seem to start the engine usually when you start the car, probably to warm it up a little bit at least, but it doesn't last for too long. It's like 20 seconds at most, maybe, I don't know. So that's something to keep in mind of, the longevity of these things. When will problems arise due to this on and off cycle?
The Hybrid Conquest starts at 32,000 euros. For the fully loaded one, you'll be paying 38,000 euros.